It is the dawn of a new age. An age of slime. Well, it isn't, but that'd be neat if it were, wouldn't it? Wouldn't a slime world be neat? Hey, what would that look like? In this video, I want to tell you about the kind of world I would like to live in, the kind of world I personally think we should build. I'm not going to talk today, or maybe ever, about how we actually go about building it. In fact, I don't really know for certain that we can. This is simply the desired goal of my personal political project. Something to orient myself towards, even if we never really get there. And yeah, this is some incredibly Thought Slime 2.0 shit, and we've been in 3.0 for like 8 months now. We're gonna talk about the good stuff, baby! The nitty-gritty of my dirty, filthy political views. But there's some stuff I need to explain before we can get to that. There are a few quite reasonable objections that I can foresee to the contents of the following video that I'd like to address right away, not to shut down criticism, but to contextualize it. Consider these some criticism conversation starters. Criticism of me is based. I personally don't like it, and I would prefer nothing but endless, fawning praise, but I must recognize that it is better for the world, and for me probably, if people like me are told how full of shit we are occasionally. So before we get started, here are an incomplete list of the ways that everything I am about to say is completely full of shit. Firstly, no doubt some of you will accuse me of doing an idealism or a utopianism for all of this. But I don't really see any other way to describe my ideal world. I'd like people to be able to imagine a better future, to be open to new possibilities and ways of being. Some of the things I describe may be contradictory, even mutually exclusive. I'm not doing that to speak in riddles or give you a Zen koan that opens your mind. But sometimes, holding two incompatible goals in mind can synthesize them into something which produces a better result than just giving up on one to pursue the other. Boy, sounds kind of dialectical when you put it that way, or I'm using the idea of dialectics wrong, and either way, I don't care. Don't feel the need to correct me. I do not care. Point is, before we can build the things that we can do, it's important to know what we want to do. Our compromises with material reality should emerge from that. To preemptively capitulate that better things are not possible limits the scope of our ambitions. So I say we strive for the impossible and settle for the possible. Secondly, and this should go without saying, but I feel the need to remind you, that I do not speak for anyone else or any other group of people. I don't speak for communoids, socialoids, or anarchoids. Or just guys with cool haircuts. I don't speak for long-dead, probably racist social theorists who may share some political label with me. I certainly don't speak for centuries of activists, resistance fighters, or political movements of any kind. This is just what I think. I own whatever silly shit I'm about to say, and any mistakes in thinking that come along with it. And that may seem obvious, but trust me, someone in the audience needed to hear it. Thirdly, and most importantly I think, in many key respects, my point of view on how the world should change is, at best, irrelevant. I'm white, I'm male-ish, I'm a settler on stolen land, I live in a very rich nation in the global north, I'm about as north gets, I'm able-bodied, I'm relatively young, I'm right-handed, I could go on. As far as our shitty society goes, I'm the default guy. I'm the guy they look at and go, yeah, him. Give him all of the money and stuff and power. The point of me saying this isn't some self-flagellating white guilt or whatever. It's that the world, as it exists right now, largely operates on behalf of people like me. Most of the ways that it needs to change are to accommodate the well-being of people whose perspectives are going to be far more relevant than mine. So there will be gaps in my reckoning. There's simply no getting around that. But even if I were like the best ally on planet Earth, even if I were somehow able to enter a machine that sucked all the oppressor juice out of me, that sucked all my juice out, the world would still be full of other things I didn't know. I can't be an expert or even meaningfully knowledgeable about everything on the Earth. No one can. So this will pointedly not be a prescriptive list of changes that need to be made to fix the world. I am sharing my perspective, and I want you to be very cautious about how you receive that perspective. I want you to keep in mind the ways that my perspective is limited and perhaps even unhelpful. And if it interests you at all, I encourage you to make something like this, to describe your ideal world, the world you want to see built, particularly from those of you whose perspectives and knowledge bases can fill in the gaps in mine, which is probably all of you. Okay, now that I've qualified all of that, I can't get in trouble for all of the bad opinions I'm about to express. Someone said recently that they felt like my videos are getting more defensive, and I hope it's clear that's a bit. I hope it's clear. The economy. Economists? Log off. I hesitate to say anything here because I know unlearning economics is going to light me up. They're going to roast me hard and there's just nothing I can do about it. Okay, look, from my perspective, as someone who doesn't know nothing, there shouldn't be money. Get rid of money, no more dollar. It's common sense. In Slime World, people don't exchange money for goods or services. If someone needs something, it is freely provided by the community without the expectation of compensation. If you're hungry, swing by the mess hall and get some food. If you need clothes, head to the clothes depot. Your window broke and you don't know how to fix it? Go to the Contractors Guild and request a repair person. People are motivated to labor by a feeling of civic-minded camaraderie, personal satisfaction, and feeling both of those, social standing. You're gonna look cool if you can contribute lots of cool shit to your community. You're gonna look even cooler if it's difficult or unpleasant. And you're gonna look like an asshole if you don't contribute as well as you're able to. Please make special note of the words able to. People should not be expected to contribute beyond their capacity to do so. This should not devolve into a meritocracy where more skilled laborers or specialized fields are given unique privileges. Doing so would necessarily mean depriving other people and also, make disabled people second-class citizens again, which defeats the whole purpose in my view. Plus, working, or the equivalent word we would have in this world, because work is a loaded term, I know, won't suck as bad. Your workplace, again, the language will need to evolve, would be under the democratic control of you and your co-laborers. You call the shots. You don't follow someone else's orders. You don't have to worry about getting fired. And even if you were asked to leave, you wouldn't lose you or your family's livelihood. You wouldn't have to put up with bullshit from customers, business partners, or anyone. Just go do some things, produce some stuff, and do it at your own pace and to your own satisfaction. Will some people still choose to be lazy? Yeah, definitely. Let them. The apparatuses needed to police other people's contributions are far more exhaustive of time and resources than simply allowing a few moochers. Although I suspect there would be far less mooching than you might think. After all, wouldn't you eventually want to do something useful if for no other reason than just to break up the day? People will say, oh, I would just sit around playing video games. No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't because that would get real old real fast. Trust me, I've spent entire days playing video games. It's not something I want to do on a regular basis. It does not feel good. Given the option, I would do other things as well. I suspect that is largely true for most people. But again, if some people choose to be lazy, okay. And the only situation where that could really make a big difference is when we've created such a surplus that people are able to mooch or be lazy. You think people are going to sit around doing nothing in the middle of a famine? You think anybody's just going to live with not having their basic needs met when the tools for them and their community to meet those needs are within their power to control? I don't really think so. Would you? Look, I'm about as lazy as a human being can be, and yet here I am making this video to get my basic needs met at patreon.com/thoughtslime. And yet, if my needs were met by default, I would still feel the need to make things. I would still do things. I took great personal satisfaction in shoveling snow off of half the block just the other day. Well, just the other day when I wrote this, it was like a month ago now. If anyone I know ever wants me to put together IKEA furniture, I would be grateful for the opportunity to do it. And if you know me, IRL, and you think that that is an exaggeration, it is not. I would really enjoy putting together your IKEA furniture, please. People like to tinker around with odd jobs and small projects. That's just what humans do. And think of all of the labor you do in your day-to-day life that doesn't earn anybody any money. Cooking, cleaning, child rearing, housework, elder care. Most of the people that do those things don't get paid for them, probably because it's usually women, and we're still kind of getting over the idea that women are not just domestic slaves. And yet, those things get done anyway. All of this will require a rethinking of the way that we look at property and personal ownership. Think of it this way. Is it really necessary that everyone owns their own suitcase when most people use them once or twice a year? Does everybody need their own lawnmowers, power tools, or any other stuff that by its nature they don't need at all times or on a moment's notice? Definitely not lawnmowers, by the way. Fuck lawns. No more lawns in Slime World. They kill biodiversity, they're wasteful, it's space that we could use to make gardens, just no more lawns. Wouldn't it make more sense for communities to have a bunch of those things that people can use as they need and return them when they're done? Like a tool library, but for all sorts of shit. Wouldn't that require fewer resources to make and allow everyone to use the best version of those things? And what is the downside of that approach, really? More wear and tear on those things? So what? Get them repaired, or better yet, design versions that won't be cost effective to sell at a profit, but last longer and make the work easier. Think about the possibilities of approaching things this way. What if we designed clothes to last multiple generations and employed tailors and seamsters to repair them as needed? Everybody could just cycle through their wardrobes every year without us needing to produce a bunch more clothes for no reason, and then those clothes just end up in a landfill. What if instead of dozens of restaurants, we had a few mess halls that all shared ovens and cooking equipment and seating and shit? Imagine the resource savings of cooking huge meals for hundreds of people in bulk. You wouldn't need to heat the oven for every single hamburger. You could heat it once and cook 200 hamburgers. I don't know why I'm using hamburgers as my example. They're not typically cooked in an oven, but you get the idea. Think of all the needless waste we could eliminate. Think of all the single-use plastic that we use for literally no reason. Now, we're not going to eliminate single-use plastics. There are plenty of legitimate and necessary uses for them. Some disabled people legitimately need plastic straws, for example, so the fact that plastic straws have become the poster child for the problem of single-use plastics sucks pretty bad, pun intended. But does anything need to be sold in a one-time use plastic clamshell? Probably some things I'm not thinking of, but not grapes. If you take the grapes home, it should be in a reusable container. You take your grapes, however many grapes you want, you slam them in that container, bring it back next time, get more grapes. The cycle continues. That's the circle of grapes. But you probably won't have grapes. More on that later. That's obviously a little less convenient at point of sale, or not sale, because everything is free. You get it. But so much better for the earth, and thus everyone and everything. And also, not really that much less convenient because that means nobody's got to work in the grape packaging factory and fewer people need to work in the clamshell factory. In general, we should just organize our production around how to get what we need instead of driving people to produce more and thus consume more and more and need to produce just an infinitely growing amount of shit, all of which just ends up in a landfill. It's a waste of our energy, resources, and lives. Which brings us to the environment. In Slime World, humans take responsibility for the stewardship of their environments. We do our best to live in a sustainable partnership with nature. We protect biodiversity and do everything we can to leave the world in good condition for future generations. We would have to rethink a lot of things about the way that we live our lives, particularly those of us in the West. For one, and just get ready to be mad at me, we're going to have to do as little animal agriculture as we can. I encourage you to introspect about whether you actually disagree or if maybe you're feeling a little defensive. I don't have the power to force this to happen. I'm not going to be able to make you do anything. I know that some people require animal protein to live. I am not asking anyone to die. But most people don't, and it's horribly destructive, not to mention cruel, to use animals the way that we do now. And it's easy for me to suggest changes to other people's diets, so let me explain how my own would have to change as well. I don't think it's reasonable that we have access to produce from around the world in every season at all times. I don't really see how that's sustainable without the horrible exploitation at the heart of agrobusiness today. In Slime World, I probably wouldn't have access to bananas or chocolate or, and this one hurts, coffee. Forget the whole thing actually, cancel all of it. Instead, we would do as humans have always done and live off the fat of the land. Eat local fruits and vegetables and not ship them around the world. Maybe in the future we can work out some sustainable hydroponics practices that let us grow anything anywhere and it doesn't like hurt local biodiversity because future science. But until then, We'd have to do without some things and let go of the mentality that we get everything whenever we want. Sorry. Resources that are not available in our local area could not simply be extracted by whoever could afford it. If we want something that other people have, we better be able to give them a good reason for them to trade with us. Something better than, or will kill you. We would have to demonstrate reciprocity to get the things we need, and we'd have to take better care to make certain that anything which is difficult for us to get is used effectively and efficiently. No more endless lithium to make unrepairable disposable electronics, for example. I'm a little distracted because someone pointed out that I always gesture with my hands, like with my fingers like this, and now it's all I can think about. Our energy infrastructure would be rebuilt from the ground up to make better use of sustainable technologies. But there are no two ways about this. We in the global north would need to drastically reduce our energy consumption. If you're gonna use a car, probably don't. You'd better have a damn good reason to do it. Otherwise, use public transport like everybody else. Ride a bike or a skateboard even. The way we build buildings would have to take into consideration the local climate, reducing the need for electric heating and cooling. I doubt we could eliminate it, but do our best to reduce it. Just in general, we should do our best to use less energy more efficiently. Indigenous peoples the world over have been telling people that look like me this for centuries, and we should listen to them. The indigenous people of Turtle Island, for example, lived successfully on this continent for basically forever without fossil fuels or iPhones. Perhaps if we gave them their land back, they could teach us how to live sustainably. Perhaps even if they didn't, if you take something from somebody, you should give it back. I didn't really know where else to fit that in, and I don't want to make it seem like land back is good because it's good for the environment. It's just the right thing to do. And also, as an added benefit, I do think it would be good for the environment, but the reason that it should be done is because it's just, we took it. We should give it back. Anyway, we're all gonna live in glass domes covered in plants. It's gonna be fecund as fuck, based and book chin pilled. Social issues. The basic principle that I see us abiding by in Slime World is just like fucking chill out for a second. If something can't be demonstrated to cause meaningful harm, and that's gonna be a kind of a hand-wavy answer because meaningful harm can be different in different contexts, then it should be de facto tolerated. The burden of proof is on the person accusing the act of being harmful, not on weirdos who do weird stuff. That means that you are free to dress however you like, have mutually consenting sex with other adults as you like, practice whatever religion you got, listen to whatever music you like, think, speak, and act however you want, as long as it doesn't cause undue harm to other people. Again, whatever that means in that context. It's not so simple, obviously. Slime citizens would pride themselves on the diversity of thought and culture within their communities. Eccentricity would be viewed as a necessary and beneficial social good, even if sometimes it's very annoying. For example, there was a guy in my old neighborhood that would feed the pigeons every day, and he'd let the pigeons walk all over him. And personally, that's disgusting to me. I find that viscerally disgusting. But he loved it, and why shouldn't he? Why should I get a say in it? The pigeons seemed to be having fun, he was having fun, none of my business. It would be generally accepted among the population that different people enjoy different things, and thus there is no singular unifying default way to live. Some people are monogamous, some people are not. Some people are nudist, some people are not. People would be free to reject social custom in any way that made them feel more comfortable, and while nobody else has to like it, nobody's allowed to force them to conform. And yes, I understand the natural contradiction here. If we allow people to think and speak as they like, some people will naturally begin to think that people should not be allowed to think and speak as they like. Karl Popper, paradox of tolerance, blah blah blah. And they can think that if they want, they can say so, they can act accordingly, as long as they do not interfere with the liberty or well-being of other people. Now, this is a fine line to walk, and will require constant fine-tuning. At what point does disparagement, for example, constitute harm or incitement to violence? For those of you who say never, I would encourage you to examine All of history. Go too far in one direction, you allow hate groups to flourish and make actionable threats against minority groups. But go too far in the other direction, and you become censorious, inflexible, and limit the freedom for people to express challenging or unpopular ideas. And to be clear, I do not think these two things are equivalent, but neither is ideal. Personally, I think the best way to disrupt hate groups would be to provide a decent standard of living for everyone so that poor conditions can't be blamed on some scapegoat. And to deconstruct the institutionalized power of privileged groups. Not to harm privileged people, I'm privileged, please don't hurt me, but to level the playing field so that all people participate as equals in public life. Though privileged people, maybe even myself included, may perceive this as harm. Please ignore us. It would be best to ignore us. In general, that's my advice to you, is ignore me and people like me. Like, comment, and subscribe. I'm not talking here about equality under the law either. All people should share a representative portion of decision-making power within their community. In order for them to be able to share that, they must have equivalent standards of well-being. If a mostly black neighborhood has worse access to food or shelter or medical care, then even if the rules as written don't privilege the whitos, they can wield that access as an ersatz form of power. This is why I think discussions about equality of opportunity versus equality of outcome are facile. True democracy requires not simply some abstract notion of equality of opportunity, but direct, material equality. I don't mean that everybody has to have the same stuff. People don't need the same stuff. I mean that everybody has to have the same access to stuff. That's the only way that everyone can meaningfully make choices free from economic coercion. Nobody can be forced to make a choice that is counter to their interests in order to get access to some resource they need, thus trapping them in a perpetual cycle of inequality. And that brings us to governance. Not government, none thanks, but governance. We must govern our society. I believe that the closest we can come to a fair way of decision-making for the public is direct, participatory democracy. And there are a lot of misconceptions that come up when people think about this principle. And it's far from perfect, don't get me wrong, but as far as I can tell, it's the best compromise we have. Here's how I think it should work. Any choice about how the community is managed should be put to a majority vote, which anyone within that community can participate in should they choose. Anyone should have the power to submit a proposal to amend the community's rules to a majority vote at regular public meetings. Until a proposal is submitted, things just carry on as they have, or people just act as they see fit. The granularity of your participation in this process is a matter of personal choice. If you don't have strong feelings about how the Waifu Guild models anime figurines for public consumption, you don't have to participate in that vote. Your critique is bad, Slavoj Žižek. The authority to make choices, which must be made quickly or decisively, can be temporarily invested in community-elected delegates who are recallable at any time. Their authority should not be able to supersede community preference, but rather something which acts in lieu of that preference when it would be impractical to call a vote. If we haven't gotten around to deciding the rules about fire trucks yet, the firefighting delegate can still send them out if shit is on fire. That just makes sense to me. Now, I just want to be clear about something. Sometimes this will result in bad choices being made. Yes, you're right. If you're typing up a comment about how there's so many situations where that could go bad, yes, it could. So too can any other decision-making process. If you're going to ask a question like, well, how do we stop the community from making this bad choice? I don't know. We can't. Every system is capable of making bad choices. Perhaps you can foresee a way that leaving something to a popular vote could go wrong, but ask yourself, could that outcome also come about as the result of a representative or ruler making that same bad choice? And unlike other systems, it's much easier to overturn bad policy when its effects become clear. And also, it doesn't presume that there exists some intelligentsia whose decision-making prowess is able to assess what is best for people better than those people themselves could. Unlike other systems, if everyone involved in this one does what they think is best for them, which people tend to do, sick. That's good, actually. That's what we wanted. Nice. But hold on a second. If we have rules and people are making all these rules at all these meetings, who enforces those rules if there's no police? What do we do if people break the rules? Who do we turn to? Crime! What we would call crime probably can't be eliminated. People are always going to do harmful or antisocial stuff. I do think we can drastically reduce it through meeting everyone's basic needs, sufficient mental health care, effective drug treatment, and a general rethinking of the way that we socialize people, particularly young boys, to think about violence. But we can't just pretend like it's going to go away. Like we're going to create some beautiful Star Trek utopia where people don't do bad things anymore. Even in Slime World, people will still steal or assault or kill others occasionally. But if there's no police, intelligence agencies, or prisons, then we're all fucked. We're all done so. The murderers are going to come and get us. We're vulnerable to murdering. As loath as I am to admit it, as fundamentally corrupt as the institution of policing is, there does exist a legitimate need to defend ourselves and our communities from violence. So wouldn't it be nice if we had one for a change? Community defense would be a community duty, something which everyone who is able to is expected to contribute to. Some people should be given the duty of guarding the community from violence or other antisocial behaviors. Their conduct should be subject to constant scrutiny from the public and immediate dismissal if it is found to be lacking. We do not give them special privileges to do violence, and the violence that is required in the commission of their duties should be defensive in nature and, critically, not exceed the boundaries of what any other person would be permitted to do in a similar situation. You don't give some people guns and say, hey, if shit gets bad, you can shoot people a little bit. Try not to, but if you have to, it's okay. Don't people, but you're allowed to if you really need to. Personally, I think a random lottery of all eligible community members would be the best way to assign this duty, to weed out those that want an excuse to exercise power or authority over others. The way that we treat jury duty now, for example. If anyone given this duty knows that once their term is up, they're a regular nobody like everybody else, that'd temper any cruel or corrupt impulses they might get, especially knowing that the next term, the guy they're hassling might be on guard duty. Instead of simply cramming crimos in a big crime building and calling it a day, we would seek to understand the reason people commit crimes so that we can attempt to prevent those crimes from happening in the first place. And once they have happened, to stop the crimos from re-criming. You might still be brought to a building that you can't come and go from as you please, but the purpose of that building would be a specialized form of treatment, not punishment. It should be, in an ideal world, a perfectly pleasant place to be. A place that's comfortable and has all the amenities you might need in addition to specialists who can provide rehabilitative care. Rehabilitative care. Such a long script, and I have to say so many words. If possible, offenders should be able to go about as they please under appropriate supervision to prevent them from fleeing or doing further crimes. It is understood that such people are still members of the community with the same free and full rights afforded to every other member of the community. Let's stop here for a second, because this is an area where I think we might want to take a closer look. Is what I'm describing a prison? Does it matter if it's a nice place? A nice prison is still a prison. Look, I don't have all the answers, but if someone is likely to be violent, it impedes the community's right to safety, and you can't just let them do that. This is perhaps an area where my view is kind of weak or contradictory, and I would encourage you to grapple with how you feel about what I'm saying here, or if you like any of it, or if you think I'm just reinventing prisons and putting a nice spin on it. In my mind, the difference is that a prison is for punishing a prisoner, whereas what I'm suggesting at least intends to help them curb antisocial tendencies so that they can live normal lives, or, failing rehabilitation, happy, meaningful lives away from people they might harm. The question to ask is, do you think that distinction is meaningful? Do you think the people held in such a place would make that distinction? And I don't know the answer to that question. I know that a lot of this might be upsetting to some of you. I don't wish to trivialize the anger that victims of violent crime and other forms of abuse suffer. I don't want to give you the impression that I particularly like people who are violent, or that their suffering is more important than yours. The reason that I think it's wrong to punish people for these things is that I don't think it works. To be 100% clear, I do also think it's morally wrong, but if it were morally wrong and worked, I might feel more conflicted about it. I understand why some people might want vengeance. It's easy for me to say that revenge only begets more revenge, but I've never been the victim of a violent crime, and I might feel very differently if I had been. Luckily for me, punishment doesn't work. so I don't have to grapple with that question. If we allow those who commit crimes to irrevocably become part of a criminal underclass, there's no incentive for them to not reoffend. If we tell them, hey, you're a crime person, and therefore no longer welcome in polite society, and they're just going to do more crime instead of attempting to rejoin polite society, obviously. And in a broader sense, the punishment mentality also allows us to shrug off factors which contribute to violent crime by attributing it merely to the actions of bad actors who are inherently criminal. It suggests that to fix the problem, we just need to make them suffer as much as their victims did, and then I guess the suffering points of the universe equal out, more or less. And bonus, other people will be scared into not doing similar things. I'm saying it in a silly way, but I think that's the general idea. And I agree that people certainly bear personal responsibility for their actions, but there are other factors beyond people's immediate control which influence violent crime. Poverty, addiction, violent socialization, untreated mental health issues, abuse. We'll probably have more success changing those factors than trying to change the darkness inside the hearts of man. Is that sexist language? I don't know, because men do most violent crime, so probably it isn't sexist language, actually. Besides, if someone is just inherently criminal, if they're just a bad egg and nothing could have changed that, then do they really bear responsibility for their actions? How can you at once claim that someone is inherently and unchangeably bad, but tell them it's their responsibility to be good nonetheless? How can someone deserve to be punished if nothing they could have done would have made them into a cooler, chiller guy? In most cases, there should be an attempt at restorative justice. We have to prioritize the safety and recovery of victims of violence first, naturally. That's the most important thing. And what that means is going to vary on a case-by-case basis. I can't give simple answers to these questions because it's a huge category of things that can happen. Education. Education should be a lifelong, self-directed process available to anyone and everyone who is interested in it, rather than simply prescriptive syllabuses predetermined to be in the student's best interests for them, doled out in regimented increments based on where that student should be developmentally. Students are instead encouraged to pursue whatever knowledge or training they find personally fulfilling. Certainly, children are not prepared to make huge, life-altering choices. They may decide to forego something critical, like learning to read while their brains are still at the most plastic, and struggle to learn that skill later in life. However, any child learning to do just about anything is going to want to eventually learn the most fundamental things we teach children, just to pursue their own interests. Learning to perform music, for example, will teach children how to read and how to do some basic math. See also drawing, sports, computer, anything a child might find interesting. Playing video games. You have to learn to read to play video games. And when that goal is based on their own interests, they're more likely to put in the time and effort to excel, rather than simply doing the bare minimum to get whatever grade they have to get their parents off their back. Which do you find that children generally put more passion into? Their hobbies or their homework? What if their homework was simply something they chose to do because it helped them pursue their hobbies? It also means that students can learn at their own pace, so they aren't pressured to constantly move on before they've adequately absorbed the material. This would be especially helpful for children with learning disabilities whose skills and abilities may go underdeveloped if forced to maintain the same pace as their neurotypical peers. It would also benefit gifted children who wouldn't have to slow down to accommodate others, and also wouldn't feel an enormous pressure to maintain their giftedness. And I speak with some personal experience on both of these fronts because counterintuitively, they're kind of the same thing, but that's a subject for another video. The entire concept of grades and mandatory testing would likely be entirely rethought or dismissed. We're not trying to make sure children are meeting our standards, but allowed to direct their own education towards their own goals, and therefore to develop those goals and to understand what is required to meet them. And if they set those goals low, or don't seem to be interested in doing much of anything, there's probably a reason for that, and we should investigate that further and see what's going on with them. That's not typical. Adults should feel free to continue education as long as they please in a similar fashion, at their own discretion. Education should not be seen as a means to an end, but also an enriching and valuable experience in its own right. Because it's in everyone's best interest for lots of people to know lots of things, particularly if we all gotta work together to make important choices, like the aforementioned anime figurines. Imagine the movies we could have if everyone who wanted to be able to could go to film school. Imagine the things we could build if everyone who wanted to were able to take engineering classes. Imagine the medical and scientific breakthroughs if everyone were able to study whatever field they felt drawn to, free of any sort of economic incentive to do some useless but profitable shit. What would you learn if you could tomorrow? So maybe now you're starting to see why I included so many caveats in the beginning of this video. There's a lot more that goes into building a Earth than I'm going to be able to cover in a YouTube video. And I think the project of single-handedly trying to determine how everything should run is not really something people should try to do anyway. I'm giving you the broad strokes because I don't have all the answers. Anyone who tells you that they do is a ding-dong. They definitely don't. I don't know how we should farm. I'm not a farmer. I don't know how we should set up telecommunications infrastructure. I'm not a scientist. I know nothing. If we want to know how to edit YouTube videos, if I can contribute to that discussion. If we want to know how to edit YouTube videos, if I can contribute to that discussion. There are plenty of areas I just glossed over, kind of intentionally. International relations, the military, assisted living, food production, the arts, entertainment. I can't give you a complete picture. I can't form a complete picture. Nobody could. I guess like if Buddha wanted to make a video like this, go for it, my dude. The rest of us can't do that because we can't see everything. But I hope at least I've given you something to think about. I hope that the areas where you disagree with me, and I hope that there are some areas where you disagree with me, help you clarify what you want the world to look like. None of us can make that choice alone. It is a collaborative project. And if the spirit moves you, I encourage you to make your own version of this. Talk about how you want things to be, if for no other reason than just to imagine things being better for a little while. To imagine something worth striving for. Maybe we never get there. Probably we don't. But every step closer makes things a little bit better, so it's worth a shot. But if I'm being realistic, I think it's naive to say that we're in control of our destiny, because free will is an elaborate illusion designed to keep us complacent with the invisible rule of those that blink above.
Hello and welcome to the Eyeball Zone.
Here in the Eyeball Zone, we can foresee a perfect world, where all serve our milky white tendrils by putting us on small leftist content creators who need eyeballs on their work. Hey, cut it out. Stop it. You know what I'm talking about. Cut it out. You're denying climate change, aren't you? The answer might surprise you. In You're Wrong About Climate Change, Ponderful discusses soft climate denial, the way that the Ponderful discusses soft climate denial, the way that climate change is insidiously minimized by rhetoric that, at once, recognizes that it is real, but also presents unhelpful attitudes towards it, like greenwashing, or claiming the burden is on industrializing nations in Africa, or we're straight-boned no matter what we do, so just give up and die. She goes over how the left is pretty good at countering outright climate denial, but tends to be tripped up by this softer denialism, and how we should really go about combating it. Rhetorically, I mean. I'm not advocating eco-terrorism out loud. She also has a lot of great videos about autism that I would love to highlight, but they'll be more relevant for a project I'm working on for the future. I don't know, watch them anyway. What am I, your dad? Hey, also, small correction on last week's video. I forgot to put some of the highlighted videos in the description, most pertinently, Twin Rabbits Stolen Anarchy. The links to those will be in the description to this video, just because I'm afraid they might not have gotten the exposure they should have, because people don't tend to just like search for the videos when I recommend them. They click on the link. What was I gonna say? I was gonna say something. Oh, right. Do you have a small leftist project you'd like to condemn to the Eyeball Zone? Send no more than one email to thoughtslimeeditor@gmail.com with pertinent details such as your pronouns, and perhaps you too shall find yourself trapped forevermore in the Eyeball Zone.